we're going to use the face mold, so it's not modelling the faces by hand. Obviously, if you want to model your face by hand, you can do. But this video was more to show you different things you can use with the face mold. Specifically, we're going to use the one that's got like the little eye holes in. Oh, I thought you was filming from above.
You're on both cameras at the moment, so it doesn't really matter.
Okay. And I do, at the moment, we've got 2 moulds. So there's one without eyes, one with eyes, and this one's slightly smaller. So we're using the bigger one with eyes. Basically, I've got a little bit less work to do on the one that's already got the eyes in. I'm going to be making it with Saracino. I'm going to be using pre-coloured Saracino because it's easier. So this is the modelling paste. Those of you that watch me all the time will be fully aware of the Saracino, and it's got cocoa butter in. It shouldn't dry and crack easily. It gives you a while to work with it. But if you've got hot hands, it will get soft. If it's cold, it will get hard. So you have to kind of knead it so it's kind of an in-between temperature. Then probably use those colours, maybe a bit of black as well. I'll probably use some pens, some of the edible pens. Depends which face we do. Or we might even do some painting. Also, I'm going to use the petal palettes. They're called petal palettes, aren't they? This is the Dazzler set. They're a little bit loose in the thing, but that's fine. Or you can use powders. Okay, so don't think you have to have these. It's just that I know a lot of you guys have got these, so I thought I'll show you them. You want some brushes, you can have different thicknesses and stuff depending on what exactly you want to do with it. Those of you that haven't used the Saracino before as well, I forgot to say, like, you can just mix any kind of food colourings in with that. You don't have to use it pre-coloured, I'm just lazy. And you can buy it in different sizes as well, so if you think you're going to use a lot, you can buy bigger pots of it. So you're going to need paste. I'm going to be honest, I can't remember how much paste you fill it with. Can you? Was it 30 grams? It depends as well on what you're doing with it. So if it's going to be solid paste, you can put more in. If it's not going to be solid paste, you're going to put less in. So if it's not solid paste, you can put a polystyrene ball in. Usually, I would dust them as well with corn flour. There we go with some corn flour. You can either dab it straight in, or if you prefer, let me put some in my cup or everywhere. Let's put it everywhere. Why not? Just taking a clean brush, clean fluffy brush, not a brush that you want to keep a nice point on, and just rub into the mould, especially in like the nose and the mouth area. Okay. And then just tap out any extra, because if you're using like a dark colour, you don't want to be able to see that. So 29.9 something, that's close enough. Just make sure that you've not got creases and cracks in your paste. So give your paste a good knead. If your paste is very sticky, just put some corn flour on your hands as well. I don't mind if I've got creases at the back, but it's more the area at the front of the face. I'll just smooth it off a little bit. I'm going to push it into the mould. You need to press really firmly, and I mean really firmly, into the nose and mouth area, because if you don't, they won't end up with a mouth and nose at all, okay? If you struggle, so like my fingernails are kind of getting in the way, use a balling tool or something if you prefer to push that firmly in place. Just make sure it doesn't stick to your balling tool, which mine is doing, because if it sticks to your balling tool, it just pulls it straight back out of the mould again. Okay, should we do this one with a polystyrene ball? What I don't want you to do is pick it up and press here, because the mould, I know this is a slightly different mould, is very thin. Can you see at the nose area here? Because you can't see the daylight behind it, might be harder to tell, but it's very, very thin at this point. And what happens is people do this to remove it from the mould, and all you're doing is squashing all the features on the face, which kind of ruins it. So, you know, like I say, you still need a bit of practice at using the mould. It doesn't always work instantly. I'm gonna go for, that's just, I think, a 2 centimetre one. Let's go for the 2 centimetre one. I think in the one I made earlier, it might have had a 3 centimetre one in it, or maybe a 2.5 centimetre one. And then you're just going to pinch it all together at the back. Now, for me, I personally don't care how messy it is at the back of my head, and I know a lot of you guys do. I don't know that I've ever actually made a lady that doesn't have hair, and I know that there is obviously instances where some people will have a shaved head or no hair. So you would want to spend a while smoothing off the back of the head and getting it nice and round. So can you see I've left it so it sticks out of the mould? You don't have to have it sticking out the mould. Like I say, I haven't really spent time pressing down those creases, but you can do. Okay. If you're certain that it's pressed in as far as it's going to go and that everything's into the nose and mouth, and to be honest, there's no way really of knowing if it definitely has pushed in far enough until you pull it out. Then usually what I would do is I'd leave it for a good 10 minutes or so, because when I first kneaded this, it can be quite soft. So when you pull it out of the mould, it's very easy to distort it, especially if it starts to twist from side to side as you're pulling it out of the mould, okay? So ideally that one needs to set a bit. I'm seeing if I've got a little skewer. You can, if you're very careful, just pull out with your fingers. Or you can push something in.
Dun, dun, dun.
Well, it probably won't have worked. Because that would just be typical. So you can push like a skewer or a piece of wire or something. A skewer is usually better. It can tear out the back of the paste. So if this is very freshly put in and I put the stick in and then pull, it can sometimes just tear all out of the back of the paste. If it goes in the polystyrene, now it feels like that's in the polystyrene, it's less likely to do that, but it'd still give it time to firm up. Usually I'll just pull it slightly, making sure that I'm not touching this area down there. So if it helps, you can keep it on the work surface. And I think I'm going to use a stick. I'll show you it without as well later. These ones are very messy at the back because I actually just pinched them. So they dip in a lot, but if I was giving them hair, I would fill that out afterwards, you see. Okay, so let's see. That's not too bad actually. Her eye has maybe been moved slightly. If there's only slight like bits that haven't pressed in properly or not quite as you want, I can usually just nudge them around slightly with like a modelling tool. To be honest, it's not too bad, isn't that? I'll just maybe soften the bottom of the eye a little bit there. These ones do actually have very small noses anyway, so it's not a big pokey out nose. I'm just gonna press in a little bit underneath. I think it maybe should be slightly, yeah, it's about there, to be honest. Okay, so if there's no nose at all, you haven't pressed it in far enough. If it's just a tiny nose, they are actually meant to have a tiny nose. So like, let me show you these ones. Can you see they have very small noses on these ones? If you want to leave the stick in, you can do, because that would go obviously into a neck or into a body, or you could remove it. So it'll still leave me a hole. So if I want to put that on a figure later, I could just push that into a figure later on. So if you were making a figure and you thought that mould's not quite big enough, you would simply just press down slightly on the forehead, slightly in the eye area. You will lose sort of the outline slightly of those eyes, but it will just make that head a little bit bigger for you. Okay, so you can sort of play around with the features a little bit. Let's see if this one's had long enough, but ideally it needs longer. I can feel it's harder to pull out. That's not too bad. Usually what happens is when I pull them out with a stick, they tilt slightly side to side, and when they tilt slightly as I pull them out, you catch the nose against the edge of the mould, so just watch out for that. Okay, again, I've got a line there. I'm not worried because the hair would cover that. Okay, so if you haven't got enough paste to fill your mould like me, what you probably do is use the one colour to line it with, and then we can just block it out with a different colour in the background. And what I'm going to do is pull it slightly like that, pop it in. Really pushing. So again, remember, hang on, cornflour on my balling tool. And I've got cornflour on everything. Look, I'm so messy. Just give it a really good press in. So if you've not got enough paste, you can just pop some in the back. Just to fill it out a little bit. In fact, I should have put more in than that, but it's fine. Okay, so this one, I haven't worried about sticking out. So this is more like what these ones are like, but I'm not going to see the back. Okay, so if I was to stick these on a figure, I would stick them on, let them set overnight, even a few nights, and then I would bulk out the back of the head so it's a nicer shape, and then add the hair. Okay, so on this one, again, you should really give it 10 minutes. I'm just going to pinch it at the back, and I'm going to pull. Okay, can you see where I pulled? Sometimes where I grab it, it will make the face slightly thinner, so just watch out for that. Just cut a little bit of that off at the back. And again, I can always just press it down a little bit like that. Can you see when I've pressed it in the mould firmer, you can slightly see a cupid's bow, but it's not much of one because it is very faint. Because the idea of these is that you can either give them a cupid's bow or you can leave them without. So if you don't want it on, you would simply just rub your finger slightly along the edge, or if you've got like something a little bit softer, so you don't have to see the edge of that lip very much. The outline of the lips appears more or better when you add colour to them. Okay, so again, it will change. So you'll see that even though these are all the same moulds, I've drawn the lips on them differently, even though it's the same mould. And you can see it's the same mould because the shape of the face is the same. This one, she's got more angled cheeks, so we would need to squeeze our face a little bit to do that. I was thinking this one, but I'll do it in this colour. I didn't want to head too wide, so just made sure it hadn't been pushed out too much. And then, to get the cheekbones, I pressed in here. Almost, can you see from the side of the mouth to here? If your finger's a bit big, you can use like a modelling tool and we'll just roll it from there. I still would probably use my finger over afterwards to kind of smooth it down. And obviously the more you press, the more enhanced those cheekbones become, the sharper those cheekbones become. I'm going to press her in there as well. I don't want a chin to sag at all. I want to make sure she's nice and sharp looking. Okay, we have to open her mouth a little bit for this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the craft knife between top and bottom of her mouth. We're going to start from the very edge here. And we're going to run it across. Now, ideally, if you can do it in one motion, brilliant. I can't see it. I can't see what I'm doing, Richard. Okay, so I'm going to lift it up a tiny bit so I can get in there and that one downwards a little bit. Okay, if you catch the lip at all, just keep giving it a little nudge back in shape. Okay, then we want some white for teeth. Don't need much, although I'll probably need some more in a minute. So we want a tiny piece of white that's going to go from side to side in her mouth. So a tiny piece that's fairly pointy at either end. And I just want to slot it in. Now, if you're struggling to slot it in, let's open up her mouth a tiny bit more. Okay, so I'm going to put the water on the roof of her mouth, just a tiny bit so that the teeth stick. And then I'm going to, if I can't pick it with my fingers, I might have to use a tool. I'm going to try and get it in the top of her mouth. And we'll have to, I'm going to use one that's a bit pointier actually. Where's my metal? My metal one's just slightly sharper on the end, but just be careful if it's slightly sharper, you don't want to catch yourself on it. Okay, so we've nudged it in. Just make sure the teeth are set slightly further back than the lips themselves, okay, so they don't want to stick out further than the mouth. Then we can put our fangs in. So we want two tiny little points. So I'll use the one piece and we'll roll a point on both ends. And then we want to cut a small little triangle off the end. Okay, and then I'm probably going to squash it with my finger by accident. I'm going to try and get two a similar size. They won't be a similar size because it's impossible for me to get two things the same. So we want some water again. I'm going to stick it about here and here, I think. You might find, like, if your bottom lip gets in the way, that you might have to just put a light indentation about there. Is my head in the way again?
Yeah, a little bit.
And there, where I want the teeth to fall. And it's only a tiny bit of an indentation, okay guys, it's not a lot. Yeah, when I go small, I have to get my face really close to what I'm doing, and then you guys can't see because you just get to see the back of my head. Just go in place. Go in, go in, go in. Oh, she's got slightly different sized teeth. What I'm going to do is divide the eye where I want an eyelid to be. So sometimes I'll leave this area that's already marked as the eyeball, and then I'll do the eyelid higher up. But on this one, I want to make her eyes slimmer. I thought it made her look sexier but more evil. So instead of going above, I'm going to go below. So I'm going to go from, almost like when I draw things or paint things, I rest on my other hand just to support me. I'm going to just leave a little bit like that. Turn it around. I have to turn the face. I don't know why, I can only work because it's certain angles, so I usually end up turning the face around. So can you see it just narrows down that bit there? You don't have to put this line in, like you could just paint without this line being there, but for me it's too difficult. Just check you can see the outline of the bottom of the eye. Yeah, that one looks slightly wider, doesn't it, than that one? But it's okay. Now, these I think in the loose powders you'll probably find not the loose powders, the new ones, they come onto your brush a little bit easier. Sometimes what I do is if I can't get enough powder on, I just scratch the surface just a tiny bit so that I get more loose powder. And then I put that onto there like that. So I'm using a fairly flat brush. It's thin from one side, flat the other, because I like this one for putting the eyeshadow on. So as I get less powder in my brush, I'll go further up the face. And you can come down if you want. Can you see sort of towards the nose a little bit? Does that show? Can you see it? I also want a little bit just underneath. Now don't worry if it looks messy and untidy and she looks like she's been punched in the eye. That's absolutely fine on these. It's a look that we're going for. So that one is just the same, but we use the purple, okay? So towards the nose.
This is quite a thin dusting brush you've got, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the Silvia Mancini one. Is it called the blending and dusting one, this one?
I think so. Is it? Yeah.
So if I use it on its side that way, I'm going to cover more area. It is actually really ideal for things like eyeshadow, this one. Okay, so if it looks a bit patchy, don't worry at first, because it will all tone down and look nicer when we get like eyeshadow and stuff on there. Also, if you want to give her like a more enhanced nose, again, you can put some colour down either side of the nose. Maybe I'll go for a different colour. Let's try this one. To be fair, when it's on, it doesn't look that... This colour doesn't look that different from the last one I put on. I think it's just a lighter shade of it. So if you leave like a little bit up the middle of the nose, it just makes the bridge of the nose look like it stands out a bit more. These ones are good. The only thing that I would say I probably still always use extra. I mean, I use everything because I have hundreds of these things open anyway, but black. So this one's more like a charcoal, like grey, rather than dark black. So if you want to go really dark, use like one of the powders. So I should really have my kitchen roll down because it would make it easier than dabbing it on my hand. Now I'm trying to put this in the crease in the eyelid. So that's when you might want to, change for different brushes. So if you're doing a big area, make sure you've got a nice sort of big fluffy brush. Whereas if you want it in something much thinner, so again in creases, either make sure it's fairly thin from the side so you can use it on its side, or swap to like a smaller brush. These ones are quite nice because again, they're fairly thin. I'm going to go pink because why not? I like pink on everything. And the rest of them haven't got pink on them, on the cheeks anyway, so let's go pink. Oh, do we go for a dusky pink? We'll try it. We'll start with the dusky. Oh no, wait, I can use the one in my powder actually. This one's like a purpley pink. I'm gonna use this one. So the difference really between the palettes and the loose powders is you get a lot more powder on your brush straight away, whereas the palettes, you can still dab it off if you think you might have too much, but there's not likely to be as much powder on there. And I'm trying to go under my cheekbone so that the colour's mainly on the underneath of it. Maybe a tiny bit on a chin, maybe even a tiny bit on a forehead. Okay, lips. Let's do some lips. Again, you can either paint the lips on or we can put them on in a pen. On this one I actually used the aubergine, is it? No, eggplant, not aubergine. I was going to say aubergine. The eggplant one. But on this one I think, ooh, do we still go that colour or do we go for like a turquoise that matches the makeup? I'll go turquoise. We'll try it. So again, I'll put my hand down to rest on. Oh, my head's moving around a little bit. It's actually quite bright, isn't it, the turquoise one? Because they don't have a really defined edge to the lips, it means if you want to make them bigger, you can just draw further along than the lips so you can go further out. Or if you want them smaller, then you don't have to actually colour to the very outside edge of your lips. Just be careful that you don't catch the teeth. You can usually just rinse it off with a slightly damp brush if you do, but it's better if we just don't catch them. Okay, you don't actually see any lip beyond that tooth, but I'm still going to colour a line in anyway, just here. So usually if I've got a clean brush, slightly damp but not soaking wet, hang on, a bit much water on that, I can sometimes just take a little bit, and it's only the tiniest bit that I just want to take off there. You want your lips to go to a point in the corner, like the outer corner. You don't want them to be too thick in that outside corner, otherwise it doesn't quite look right. Okay. And are we thinking Cupid's bow or no Cupid's bow? I'll do this one with a Cupid's bow. Again, it's up to you whether you follow the line of the lips or whether you want to kind of make up your own line. This one is slightly further down than the actual line of the Cupid's bow that's on the face mould itself. Yeah, I'm happy with that. She needs some whites in her eyes. And then I need to come back and do like the eyeliner, but the white in the eye is going to need some time to dry. And this is the bit where you can either use a white pen or white powder. And I did put my white powder to the side. I've probably lost it because I lose everything. So when I mix it in the lid like this, tiny bit of dipping solution or clear alcohol or lemon essence, it's better than using water because the paint can go a little bit clumpy. Use a slightly bigger brush for mixing. And I know that you guys that watch me do this all the time will be like, yeah, we know, you tell us all the time. If you're going to use a really nice fine brush, if you're mixing the powder into a paint like what I am now, it's going to ruin the bristles of it. So always use your bigger brush for this kind of thing. And we're going to, this is again one of the Silvia Mancini ones.
A question for you.
Yes.
How do you avoid fingerprints and bits and pieces on your icing fondant when you're working?
As in like just pressing on too hard? Fingerprints?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably just don't rush to work with it, because when it's soft you're always going to end up with fingerprints if you touch it. Most of the pastes and things that I use aren't overly soft when I'm working with them. I don't have particularly hot hands though, although they're not actually as cold as normal. Usually they're fairly cold, today they're not. If I've got fairly warm hands when I'm working with it, I have to leave everything for like 10 minutes to sort of firm up, otherwise I do end up sort of squashing stuff. Her teeth look really yellow now, don't they, compared to the whites of her eyes? Let's just put a little highlight of white on her teeth. That's actually dried fairly quickly, but I'm still going to give it... I'm going to work on another one for a bit while I just make sure it's definitely dry, because I don't want to put the black on and find it smears through the white and gives me like grey everywhere. So if I do a starting point... Actually, it's not too bad this one when I'm drawing on with it. You can still see it, can't you? Maybe she could have white eyelashes. So she's going to have closed eyes. This isn't even one, sorry, that I was going to show you. I'm messing around. Sorry, guys. Let's draw some little eyelashes coming out. They're like little feathers. Little feathers under her eyes. And if you prefer to paint, you can paint. That's fine. Does she need eyebrows or not? Does she want white lips? I'm going to not do... No, I am going to do a Cupid's bow on this one. Let's do another kind of spider's web from... Where should we do the other one from? We'll do it starting from here.
Like I say, Zoe's going off...
Oh yeah, sorry, I'm just doing what I want now.
On random stuff.
Sorry, guys. Oops, I missed the centre of my spider web there. The nice things with spiders' webs is if you don't get them right, it doesn't really matter too much. The only thing is I don't think you can tell it's a face anymore. I just wanted to play really, because I thought, oh, white will show up really good on the black one. On the black paste, but oops. And obviously you can spend much longer than me making it nicer. Yeah, you can't tell it's a face anymore.
I think it's because of the eyes. You can't really tell it's got eyes.
Oh, I suppose I could colour them in.
Yeah, you can tell she's got eyes now.
Can you?
Yes.
I suppose I could stick black eyelashes on, like in 3D on this one, and maybe it would make it look a bit more face-like. Like I say, I'm just playing around. Because the bottom ones don't look right on it now, do they? Never mind. I've played with one. I might come back to it and give it eyelashes later. So we want a fairly big brush. I could get away with using this. And I want some red. So again, we'll go in there and we'll go around the eyes. Now, technically I should be avoiding the white bit in the middle of the eye, and I haven't really given it much thought and haven't avoided it. It would be better if you avoid that bit. But she can have slightly bloodshot eyes. Again, it does not need to be neat at all, this bit, okay guys? What you do want to do is try and get it slightly darker closer to the eye and then paler as it comes out. So like I say, if you don't have the petal palettes, you can just use the loose powders for it. It's fine. So let's use the one we were using for eyeshadow. The only thing is I have to remember that I've had red on it. So I want it to look like a bit streakier, so I'm going to just pull it. Can you see, so that we get flicks. Now, if you've got it in the whites of the eyes, then you don't want it there, we can wash it off, but we'll do that in a minute. I want to go a bit darker. Let's try this one. This one might be dark enough, actually. Yeah, it is. So we haven't used black. You can use black if you want. So we're going right around the very edge now. Just to darken it a bit more. So the bottom as well as the top. And again, this one is definitely nice because it doesn't have to be neat. Like, she's a bit scarier looking if it's not neat. If you want to go darker, you could use like a black rather than this colour, but I think this one works fine. Okay, it will darken when we put the black eyelashes on as well, you see, so that's going to make a bit of a difference. So let's use our brush that we were using for the water to just try and wipe some of the powder out the eyes. Again, I'm probably going to put this to one side for a minute because where I've wiped the powder out the eyes, it's going to be slightly damp. I don't mind if our eyes are a little bit grey because it's kind of creepy, but I don't want them fully powdered up. But yeah, where it's wet, I'll have difficulty drawing. So I drew the pupils on with the pens, and it'd be very difficult for me to use the pens when it's wet. So I'm going to need to give it a few minutes to dry out. I think I'm spreading that rather than getting rid of it there. Hang on. So do you notice I keep cleaning my brush on my hand? Because every time I run it through the powder's then on my brush. So if I put the brush straight back on again, it just spreads the powder rather than bringing it off. So I have to keep kind of wiping it on my hand. She's got slightly different sized eyes, that one, hasn't she? Do you know what I'm going to do with one raised eyebrow, or different eyebrows, so that it makes the eyebrows look like they're meant to be like that? Okay, so let's work on the lips while we're waiting for those eyes to dry. So I'm going to go for a red. Okay, if you don't want to use the pen, you can use a paintbrush, that's fine. I think I'm actually going to not do a Cupid's bow. So on this one, I've given her a Cupid's bow. This one, I'm going to go without the Cupid's bow to give her fuller lips. So I'm colouring it in. Again, don't press too hard if you've only just made the face, because you don't want to squash the shape of the face itself. See, I like them without Cupid's bows. So if you want the lips fuller, just go slightly over the edge a little bit. And it'll just make your lips a little bit bigger. Can you see the difference between the two? I'm also going to use a black pen. So with this, I want to run it along the bottom edge from each outside edge. I'm going to go across towards the top, but not fully into the middle. If you struggle to do it straight over the other colour, it might be that the red's not dry enough. So just give the red a bit of time to dry. But you can, guys, you can paint it as well. So you don't have to use the pen. So I'm going to put a line across the middle as well. And then we need to blend it a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of my other brushes. I'm actually going to use this little one. This is from my Sylvia Mancini pack. And anything thin. I like this one because it's flat but thin. But you could use like a pointy one as well. So it's slightly damp. And what I'm going to do is run it into the pen, dragging it towards the middle, and then dragging it inwards slightly. So it's just slightly damp, not too wet, just a little bit damp, and it's going to bring it in to the red. I'm going to bring it upwards here. So my top lip is going to be slightly darker than the bottom because the light's going to hit my bottom lip and look shinier than the top one. Okay. I'm going to take it slightly more under here. I'm just going to rinse that and try it off again a little bit. And then we're going to drag it in from the outer corner again. Okay, if you want it to look even shinier, you can, when it's dry, you can give it like an edible glaze on top, which is really nice. Or if you want to give the impression of a shine, even if you haven't put glaze on, you'll put a dot of white. So it's still a bit wet in there, so I'm not going to worry about putting more powder on, just a very tiny bit. And I'm just going to put on the edge of a lip. Can you see just there? If I keep rubbing it in, I'll go slightly pink. Or if I just leave it like that, it'll be very kind of white. I'm going to blend it in a tiny bit. Does it make it look a bit shinier? It's only like the tiniest bit that you put on there, but it just makes the lips look different. So can you see the lips look very different between those two? So if you want them like that, just draw the Cupid's bow on like what we did on the vampire one. So she's probably dry enough actually that we can do some more colouring. So I'm going to use my one with a pointy pen. Again, you can use the pens, or if you prefer, you can use the powder mixed with a dipping solution and we can paint. So I'm going to go across the top edge, so where the crease was in my eye, about here now. What you might find is if there's an awful lot of powder on, it can clog up the pen. So try if you can and draw mainly on the white bit of the eye. Like we will have to go over the powder a little bit. So I'm going fairly thick, and then we're going to bring it out and up. So we've got a nice flick on the outside edge. Do the same on this side. And if you don't know how thick you want to do these eyelashes, go thin at first, and then you can always go thicker if you need to. It's harder to take it off than it is to just put more of it on. My flicks probably won't be up at the same angle because I find that impossible to do them exactly the same. I think this one wants to come up a tiny bit more here. Sometimes when I can't get it thin enough, what I do is I swap to my brush, tiny bit of water, and I mean a tiny bit of water because if there's a lot of water in it, it will just drop on what you're doing and smudge it everywhere. And then I can just drag it into the corner. So we're going to do little eyelashes, or actually quite big eyelashes off the bottom. Concentrating more on this outer corner. They could be eyelashes or they could just be like the scary streak bits that are on her face, I suppose. Should we go for the same shape eyebrows? So they're fairly raised in the top corner because I think it's fairly, they look more evil if they're raised quite a bit. So like this one, can you see it's raised there? Same for that one. Okay. So let's go here. The further down you bring them, the angrier they're going to look as well. So we're going to go really high up here. I want to start it about in line. Can you see with the corner of the eye, roughly? So about there. You can go as thick as you want as well with these. Monster brows can be thick or thin. So try and get a little arch on there. They're slightly different again, but that's okay. I don't mind different. If you want, like I say, and you've got your pointy one, and you want to touch up any bits, you can go in with your pointy one. Or you could just use your pointy one for it all. But now I've got some that are slightly blunt, I keep them for the bigger areas. This one I'm going to need definitely in a minute. We're going to go back to the red for her eyes. I might have her looking upwards slightly, so on that one, she's supposed to be looking like dead forwards, and that's why you can't see the top or the bottom of the red, but you see white either side. Maybe if I have her looking upwards, so if she was looking upwards, you'd probably see a bit of white at the bottom. I'm going to leave, can you see a little bit of white in there? Now it's whether I get the other one in the same kind of place or not. We'll see. You can just leave them as they are, but I want to darken just the very outer edge, just to give it a bit more definition. So very carefully, with a pen or a paintbrush, you're just going to go around the outer edge. And if you want to blend it in like we did on the lips, you could do as well. I think I'm going to leave it where it's not blended in on the eyes so that the red kind of shows up more. If we blended it, it would just look more the colour of the lips and the eyes. So she would have looked different if I'd moved the eyes further down. So that, I don't mean move the eyes and her face further, but the red pupils, if we brought them so they look central rather than looking slightly up again, that would change. And then obviously the lip, by missing out the Cupid's bow, has changed that a little bit. And her eyebrows are much higher at this point here. So that's fine. So let's go for this one. So again, you could use your pen. If you've got a black pen, that's fine to use your pen. Again, you can also use a paint palette rather than the lid. I washed it up especially. Actually, I washed it up anyway because it needed washing. But I don't know where I've put it. So we're going to go for bigger brush. There's already some powder in the lid in this one, so I think we'll get all right. So when you're using your brushes, when you put it in, twist it as you bring it out. So twist and bring it out so it comes to a point. Okay, it's really important that it's got a point on the end. Usually wherever I first put my brush down, it goes fairly thick. So because I want a thin point in the middle, I struggle to start in the middle. I have to start here, go thin, then start there, go thin that way. Hopefully that makes sense to you all. Probably doesn't, but this one we're gonna put our eyebrow on with a line first. So they kind of, can you see like a Nike, is it Nike tick? Roughly-ish. Maybe not quite. And then we'll bring it back down again. And it's up to you how thick you want to go. So let's see if we can get it similar on this side. And what you're going to find, guys, is if you've mixed like your powder into a paint and it's very thin and runny, sometimes it will run when it's very liquidy. So you want it just a not really thick consistency, but not really thin either. So if you're unsure, she's got wonky eyebrows, just take a scrap bit of paste and have a bit of a play around painting with it first. Also, it will evaporate as you paint in, so you'll probably start with it a bit thinner and you'll find as you're going along, it starts to get thicker. Okay, so I flicked it out again, bringing it around on this side. Yeah, usually I find it easier painting. Well, not easier, it's easier and less faffy for me to use the pens, but I usually find it easier to go really thin with a paintbrush. Today I'm not. I think this one's actually got a tiny bit of brown in as well, so this is white, black and brown mixed together for that one. But what I could do is go grey and then we could brush some brown on if we want it slightly browner in colour. Just going to get some more black out of my pot. When you're mixing a grey, it's best to start with a small amount of black at a time and just mix it in until you get a colour that you're happy with. And like I say, this is going to be one of the just push it in quickly ones. Really pushing it in at the nose. Do you know what? If you've got way too much paste, it's fine because you can grab hold of it and we can cut it off. So we can pop that out.
Use, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the way Richard does it. And then we can cut off some of the extra. Okay. Just what I'm going to do is just press lightly above my eyes so I can work out where I want my eyebrows to go. If your fingernails get in the way, just use, I think some of you guys have got the Carlos tool and it'll just kind of create that eyebrow arch for you. But I'm only pressing gently with it. That's, again, you might not need this. It's more if your fingernails are going to get in the way. It is actually really useful for, we used it, was it in the Cute Winter Girl class where we did lips and stuff? It was good for that actually. But we don't need to create lips today. Use your spare bits for ears. We'll stick the ears on in a minute. This one's got fangs again, a bit like the other one. I did it just so it stuck out slightly from the sides rather than cutting the mouth open like that one. But if you want to do it that way, on this one you can do. It would be up to you. So, hairlines. So I want the lines to be fairly short near the nose. I'm going up the face from sort of this bit here. They'll get longer as we come further up the face. And as we come to the side of the nose, it's going to kind of come towards the eyes. Or under the eyes, I should say. You can't tell massively, but they're getting slightly longer as we're coming out towards the edge of the face there. Not so much at the side of the eyes, so try not to catch the eye area itself. And obviously bring it right down. I probably won't bring it all down the face because it's going to take me ages, but you should bring it to the back. On this one, obviously if you can round it off, it's probably better. You can still stick a piece on the back when you finish it, but just make sure you get a bit of water on your finger and rub in the seam, okay? Otherwise you'll see the line. Although the good thing is when you're putting hairlines on, you can go over the seam and it kind of hides it a bit anyway. So coming downwards from the chin. I think I actually made it a little bit longer in the cheeks. I pulled it to a bit of a pinch of the jaw. But I think I'm going to leave it like that. I did actually give it a little line kind of there between its lips. I don't know if you can see it very much on that one. I think because of all the hairlines you don't really see it too much. So then it starts to come outwards a little bit. So like the lines come this direction and then out kind of like that. You don't have to draw these long lines on, it's just so you guys can see the directions that we're going in. So bringing these lines a little bit longer now. It looks almost mouse-like at the moment. Like a little mouse. If you've pressed out the eye area a little bit and you want to put it back in, just draw that back in. And again, you want some more hairlines in where the eyelid is, but you don't want to go too long with the lines in these bits. So this one has got yellow eyes and they're actually pushed in with paste, which I know I haven't done on the other two. So what you're going to do is you want to push in the eye area. Now you can just use, like, you know, if you've got your Sylvia Mancini tools, you can just push those in, that's fine. Or, because the eye area is marked out, just use like a Dresden tool and push inwards, keeping it within the edge of the eye. Okay, just be careful you don't squash the rest of the face when you're doing it. Now, how far in you push it is up to you. I like to push it in a decent way so that I can fill it back up. If I don't press it down very fast, sometimes I find it hard enough to get a piece of paste that's small enough to fill the hole. Oh, sorry, small enough that it doesn't bulge out the hole too much, I should say. Okay, just check you've got them even. Again, you might even find, like, I think when I've done the mould, because the mould is done by hand, it's exactly like what my original one is, so you will find that it's not exactly symmetrical side to side because I cannot make things symmetrical. And then if you want to make them bigger or wider, or you can just open up those eye sockets a bit more if you want to. You don't have to. I think this is actually the yellow Serratina with a very tiny bit of white that I put in because I thought the yellow on its own was a bit bright, so it's just got a tiny bit of white paste added to that to pale it down a little bit or tone it down a bit. I'm gonna put a tiny bit of water in each eye. Now really I should check the size before putting the water in. I've committed to that now already. So we're going to push this into our eye socket. You can push it in and around, like in a ball, and just push it to the edge, or you can start to shape it slightly so that it's more like the shape of your eye sockets are slightly like lemon shaped. The deeper I press the hole, the more paste I'm going to need to fill it. I reckon if you know you've pushed it in the same amount as me, which there isn't any way to know how deep you've pressed it, you know, I mean, that's too difficult to measure the depth of. I'd also do it slightly differently every time. These ones stick out slightly, which is what I want. These ones don't, and these should really stick out a little bit. So these ones, I haven't put them in big enough. Okay, so really I should take them out and put a bit more in. But I'm just conscious that if you want to see me do any more, I don't want to spend ages sort of pulling them back out again. I'm just nudging them to the edge of the eye socket. I don't want there to be a big gap in between, just because it makes it harder for me to draw onto it. Okay, so we need a bit of white. We need ears sticking on. I don't know how big wolves' ears are actually. I just guessed, so I don't know if actually the ears even look like a wolf's ears or not.
A wolf or werewolf?
Werewolf. Kind of teardrop-ish to start with, and then we'll squash them down. I don't know how pointy they are actually. They're probably not that pointy. I think I made them look a little bit cat-like. You're going to put your hairlines all in your ears. And you spend way more time than I have done. And then what you want to do is try and fold your ear slightly, like that. So it's not quite in half. This one just kind of comes over a little bit there. Again, you would really put this everywhere. I know I haven't put it on everything. And then I'm going to push it onto the face. Give it a good firm press on in place. Once it's on there, you can put more lines and things on as well if you want. When you've put your ears on, ideally you want them to set before you start putting the powder and colour on the face, okay? I'm going to probably just put the colour on straight away, but you should give it a bit of time to set. And put the water on it first. Fold it over a little bit there. I know I haven't put all the fur lines on it. I don't know, do they come like more that way? Werewolf's ears or not? I guess if it's like a wolf, then it's the same as a dog, and they can actually kind of move the ears around a bit, can't they? So whatever angle will be okay, I think. I think they do look very cat-like, don't they, those ears? Maybe they're too rounded. and rounding them by just pressing on the ends slightly. Still looks like a cat. Okay. So before we do the painting and the teeth, we're going to put a bit of powder on. So I want to lighten around here. Now I think this brush is probably going to be best. So if you've only got one of these brushes, and obviously you don't want to like just clean it straight away and use it for the next colour because it'll be wet and you need it to be dry. Usually what I do is I just rub it on my kitchen roll for a little bit to try and pull most of the colour out, and then I'll use it on my colour again, the next colour. So put a bit on my brush, rub it on the kitchen towel again for a minute, just so that I know I've not got too much in the bristles. Again, if you want it one flat colour, you don't have to put this bit on. I just liked it to look a little bit lighter around the eye area.
Just out of interest, how could you use these face moulds for like childlike faces?
You really want to be pushing the lips out of them because the lips are quite sort of grown up, adult feminine, so you'd want to rub them down a bit. And you want to squash them so the face becomes a little bit rounder. So if you've got a lot of excess powder that you don't want on there, try not to blow it. I know sometimes you can't help it, but try not to. Just sort of dust it off with a clean, dry brush if you can. Sometimes I pick up one that's been used for black by accident. That happens frequently actually. So let's take a bit of brown. And I'm going to go from the top down here a little bit. And you don't have to put huge amounts of colour on. I'm going to try and get it down the middle of the nose a little bit. I think does it look less wolf-like when it's brown? Let's go with some of that charcoal-y colour. Over the top. So a bit of brown on it is fine as well, but I'm going to go for that charcoal on there. I'm going to go under kind of the eye area there and there. Try not to press too hard, otherwise you will still squash your features if it's freshly made. I want to colour in the nose. So just carefully, so we'll start with a little round bit on the end, sort of centre bit of the nose. And then we'll bring it over to the nostrils. Okay, so just the end bit. I mean, you could colour further up the nose if you want, but I think just the sort of bun end bit is usually okay for that. I'm going to give this one just full lips, I think. When I'm colouring like a person's lips normally, I wouldn't emphasise these edge bits too much. Can you see how I'm going quite far out to the sides? I'm trying to keep it thin, but I am going fairly far out to the side. I wouldn't really do that too much, like on an actual person, because they'd look like the Joker if I did that. So can you see I've made it really very wide with it? This one's got much bigger lips, hasn't it? Maybe not much bigger, but a bit bigger. So like I say, it just depends how much you colour over the edge of the lip as to what that goes like. So she's going to need teeth, but we'll do that in a minute. I'm going to go around the edge of our eye. So I'm going to actually colour on the yellow bit at first on this one. But it doesn't matter if you catch the face rather than the eyes with this. Whichever you prefer is fine. I'm going to bring it down into the corner, sort of right towards the nose a bit. Now what you're going to find harder is where you've drawn all the lines for the fur lines, it gives you a much more uneven surface. So when you're trying to draw the line, you don't get really neat lines anymore. That's my excuse anyway. And it just has a little flick on the outside corner. So I haven't done the flick quite as extreme as the other one. In fact, it's actually got a little bit darker eyeshadow just above the eye that I haven't done on this one. Can you see here? I've gone a little bit darker. I think I prefer it without that bit though. I'm just wondering whether I might enhance this line here with a bit of black. Yep, I've done it now. And then because it's a werewolf, we're going to go bushier with the eyebrows, so more kind of like individual lines rather than just one long line. Because as you get to the thinner bit, you could probably start drawing the thinner line there, but on here, the individual hairs. Just darkening the tips of the ears. Okay, should we have this one looking in a different direction? Should we do it looking to the side?
Yeah.
So this one's kind of the same direction as the one in red, where we have a bit of the eye sort of showing underneath the pupil, the iris. Let's do this one. I guess actually animals have big eyes, don't they? So really it should have bigger eyes. So if I do a curve like that, then it's looking to the side. And let's again leave a little dot. Maybe we should leave 2 dots in this one. And then we're going to colour this in. So I'm trying not to colour in those 2 dots that I've just, or those circles that I've kind of drawn on there. Or you could, if you do colour it in black, you could just put a dot of white paint on once the pen's dried afterwards, that's fine. I'm not sure I like it looking to the side as much now I've done that. I'm going to widen it a bit here. I've maybe widened it too much now. And again, we'll try and do the same at this side. And then I think I'm going to make it a little bit wider just here. If you're unsure, just stick for in the middle. So if you draw the pupil in the middle, it does make things a little bit easier. But it's nice sometimes to have them looking off to a different direction as well. So colouring this bit in. I'm going to give it black freckles because we've accidentally got a black freckle on there by accident. But yeah, I squared off its jaw a little bit here, so if you wanted to, you could kind of pinch, you know, like here and here. Again, I think it just maybe makes it look a bit more cat-like. To see it when I do that?
Yeah, well, that's good though.
Okay. So because the black on the lips is still a bit wet, it's going to make it harder for me to add the teeth. So it is doable, I think, but it's just a little bit more difficult for me. Let's see. So what I have to be careful of is adding water over the top of where my pen is as well. What I'm going to do is just put a little indentation again where I want the fangs to go. So kind of there and there. A little bit of water, because if I go too overboard with the water, it's just going to smudge the black. I think I might have done a little bit. These are massive teeth on this one. They're not as obvious because I've whitened, can you see around here quite a lot? Meaning the teeth don't show up quite as much. Right, it kind of sticks to the knife, so I'll just let it stick to the knife and then try and push it on this way. Oops, I put a little indent in that tooth by accident there. There we go, just bringing it so it doesn't stick too much to the chin. Yeah, there we go. We've got time for one more quickly, do you think?
Yeah, go for them. Go for the one with the horns.
This one is pretty much all felt pens on this one as well. And I give her a scar because I thought she would. I actually didn't do that by accident. Usually the scars are by accident when I do them on my figures. This one wasn't. It was on purpose. Also got a slightly marbled face. I don't think I've got enough paste here either. Let's just add it. We've got a bit of grey left over, so I'm going to mix that into it. Why not? You can stick a bit of white into it. There we go. Yeah, when I'm kneading it a lot, it's getting quite warm and quite sticky, so, you know, that is something you have to be careful of when you're using the moulds. So ideally, I'd give it a few minutes before putting it in. Let's push it into the mould. Pressing it firmly into the nose and mouth area. I don't have much to grab hold of on this one. But there we go. There we go, she's out. Just making my face more angular there. Okay, this one, can you see her eyebrows come down? I've actually pressed slightly on the face itself, so just here, above the eye, I'm going to press. In fact, you might even find actually if you've got one of these, this will work well for it. So just to gently press it down and smooth it out a little bit. If you press too hard or too quickly, so do it gradually, because what I'm getting is some slight creases underneath. Now, it's not too obvious, I don't think, but if I'd gone slightly more gentle with it, I wouldn't get those on quite as obvious. Like, they wouldn't be as obvious, those little crease lines. Right, okay guys, I've given it, oh, the scar. We forgot her scar. Does she want it in the same place, really? Yeah, why not? But it's on the different eye.
So not the same place.
Oh, kind of. Okay. So we've got our scar in there. We're going to put some space in for horns. I'm going to put a little indentation in where I want them to go so that I've got something to kind of stick them into. Otherwise, they can just drop out fairly easily. Just watch, because when you're doing this, you have a tendency to squash the rest of the face. I also have a tendency to put it in at a different angle on both sides. So if you want to let it firm up before you add the little holes, that would be fine. Yeah, I'm not sure if they're in exactly the same place or not. Okay, I haven't given her any blusher. I feel like maybe I should have done, but it's okay. I think still yellow eyes. So what I'm going to do is going to take my pen. Again, if you prefer to use paints, it's fine. And I'm going to just draw about halfway up. It might not look quite as bright yellow actually on this colour as on that one. So we're going to colour in this bottom half of the eye. Again, I probably won't get them even. I never ever do. I guess that's when, you know, if you're using the one that doesn't have eyes and you're using like a Silvia Mancini like eye set or something in it, that's what kind of makes it even for you. Okay, orange next. I wanted them to be a bit flame-like our eyes, you see, so what I did was orange, but kind of flicking it up from the bottom. So probably just about halfway up the yellow, maybe just slightly past halfway up the yellow. Just don't cover the whole of your yellow in it though. I'm just thickening up the orange just at the very bottom. Again, because I've only just done it, the eyes are very soft, so I'm having to be very careful because it's kind of pressing in a little bit. So you would ideally give it a little bit of time to firm up. Need to go a bit more into the corner with that one. Then we've got a bit of red. So I'm going to try and draw the red in a line across the bottom. Okay, so just a line across the bottom first, and then we're going to flick it up a bit like we did with the orange, but just don't bring the lines up very far, just small little lines. If you want to blend them together, you can do. I don't mind them being like lines on this because I thought it looked more flame-like when you could see the lines. I think the yellow definitely shows up better on this colour than the blue though, doesn't it? So I'm kind of following, can you see that line that we've kind of pressed into the paste anyway? So I'll put like the eyelash flick on, because I think the yellow is going to look more obvious as well when we've got this bit on. You can do that, you can draw lots of individual eyelashes on them as well. I just thought, I don't know why I thought it looked more evil and sinister to just have an evil, like a flick. I actually just like it with a flick. I think actually on a lot of my figures I just give them a flick anyway, don't I? I didn't do bottom ones on this because I didn't think it needed them, but what I'm just going to actually do just quickly is put a tiny bit of this in mascara, not all the way up and down, and then what I'm going to do is use that thin brush. So you remember how we did on the eyeliner earlier, and then we spread that with a bit of water. It's actually still fairly dark as that. I wanted it slightly more muted down. I don't want it to be as dark and obvious as like the eyebrow itself.
So green lips, we'll go with the royal blue for the eyes.
Okay.
Which green have you gone with? Was there only one?
There's only one green,
right,
leaf green. Yeah.
Right, okay.
So again, you can keep it really bright, or if you want, like we did with the other one, you can darken it by just going in with a bit of black kind of in the corners and then kind of spreading it. I've got a different brush this time, but it's fine. Blending it and spreading it across. So what we said, dark blue.
Yeah, the royal blue pen.
Okay. See, on hers, she's actually got both purples. So maybe I'll go with both blues. Do you think? So I went for the darker one in the crease. There might not actually be space for both blues, but we'll see. So the darker one goes in the crease, and then just inside the crease, the slightly lighter one. I don't think it actually shows up very well though. Like you can't see, can you, on the camera, there's two different ones? Ooh, I think that one goes a bit higher on that one than it does on this one. So I'm going to go with the bright blue. What's this one? Sky blue. Kind of in between. Maybe it'll be too bright, this one. Oh no, I like it. It goes well with the yellow, I think. I like it anyway. She's got lean to one side, hasn't she, this one? And then what I did was I just emphasised the side of the nose a bit. So what we'll do is we'll use a bit of this, but I want it to be fairly diluted down. And you can use powder if you want. I think I painted it on this one, but you can just use powder. And if you're not comfortable doing this bit, just leave it without, it's fine. Oops. So I want it fairly diluted. Again, I like to test things on my finger. And then we're going to bring it from there. So from the nostrils to sort of where the eyebrows are. Okay. I'm going to bring it slightly under the nose just so you can see where the edge of the nose is. And then what I'll do is I'll just tiny bit of water on my brush, and then we'll dilute that and sort of drag it outwards a little bit. But yeah, can you see how that just emphasises it a bit? And then the little dots on the head, I actually just drew them on, and then it needs its horn still. I just drew them on with black, but you could put whatever colour you wanted on. Should I do them in blue? So it matches its eyeshadow. So it made it slightly more animal-like by having little dots on. I don't know in what way, but less human-like maybe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll. I don't mind if my piece is too big to start with, because what I'm going to do is roll so we get a point on each end, and then we'll cut it down to the size that I want. So, you know, if we do this kind of shape, and then we can cut it down where we want. Or you could play around, you know, you could have completely different shaped horns. So can you see it's like almost like a backwards S shape, or an S, a loose S shape if we do it that way. Or we could go for something that's more kind of coiled around. And then obviously you just put a bit of water on it and press it in place. I haven't put water on just in case it looks silly. I haven't got them the same, have I, all these two? How have I got it so different? Actually, I think one of the horns is slightly higher on the head as well than the other one, which doesn't help. Yeah, let's use that one instead. This one's nice too, but I thought blue would go better with the colour scheme. I'm going to dry dust this one on. So this was kind of wet paint that I mixed the signature gold with. I'll put that there so you can see it. Does that show?
Yes.
I like that colour. I wonder if it would show on a face. I think a face isn't dark enough for this to show up on a lot. Like the hint of colours definitely show better on a darker colour. So that shows up much better on black than on that.
Yeah, the dust you're using, do you want to hold it up to the camera?
So that one was the Shell Nacre blue.
Yeah.
I think Emily will probably put some links up as well for you guys. So I think that's it for today, guys. If you have a play around with them, you'll have to send us your pictures. It'd be nice to see what you've all made. So if you guys are on Instagram and your followers on Instagram, if you put it in your Instagram stories and then tag me, or you know when you do it, is it called a mention where you put that and then you put my name and then it shows up for me, and then I can share your work in